Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Breakfast Club. Welcome to our new tradition. Starting today, we're going to have Motivational Mondays where everybody gets a chance to share a quote or an event or a person that motivates them. And mine today is going to be a quote from our book, From Of Mice and Men, where Slim is criticizing those ranch hands that go around alone and never reach out or make a connection with another worker. And he's complimenting George and Lenny for having each other's back. And he says to George that it seems that everybody in the world is scared of each other. And that motivates me to be good to the people in my own life, to reach out to my friends, and to make connections. So with that said, Miss Booty, how about you? What's got you motivated today?
I'm sorry. I didn't see you guys there. I was just listening to the Garden of Eden because it reminds me of our setting in Of Mice and Men.
Oh shoot, I guess we broke in on Miss Booty right in the middle of her morning routine. Boy, I wonder what that feels like. Well, while we give Miss Booty a chance to finish up what she needs to do, we're going to review a little bit about those literary elements that we've been talking about all year and the ones that Steinbeck uses in Of Mice and Men. And the first one we're going to talk about today is characterization. And you should remember from earlier in the year, there are two types of characterization, direct and indirect, and Steinbeck uses both masterfully in Of Mice and Men. And one character in particular that he does a lot of this with is Slim. And he characterizes Slim directly for about half a page in chapter 2. And he says that he's the prince of the ranch. And he tells us how smart he is, how intelligent he is, when he says that his words have undertones not of thought, but of understanding beyond thought. We learn indirectly how tough Slim is. When Curly goes to fight him, they say he better not tangle with Slim. Don't nobody know what Slim can do. And we know how, with that toughness, he's also a very kind person. We know this from his own words to George about Lenny, his own actions towards Lenny, and very subtly, right there in the middle of chapter 2, George tells Slim what a good worker Lenny is, and Steinbeck writes down that Slim smiles at George at having given the compliment. So we know that he's a very kind person. We also know that he's very, I guess today we'd call him woke, but progressive and inclusive, because in chapter 4 we learn he's the only one that goes to visit crooks in his bunkhouse. So he's able to cross those racial lines in the middle of Great Depression, 1930 segregated America. So, Miss Booty, you ready for us yet?
Hey, Mr. Albert. Wow, I'm not used to looking down at you. The weather looks great up here today. How exciting. Oh, hi everyone. Happy Motivational Monday. So on the very first day of distance learning, we went through book suggestions and I suggested The Perks of Being a Wallflower to you. So now that we've had, this couple weeks of distance learning and we've been talking about meeting some goals and getting out there and, just trying to keep yourself busy throughout these weeks at home, I thought of a quote from The Perks of Being a Wallflower that I wanted to share with you that I hope motivates you to go forward and maybe try something new this week. And maybe for me too, it will motivate me to try something new as well. So here it goes. So on page 211, the main character, Charlie, says, "I guess we are who we are for a lot of reasons, and maybe we'll never know most of them. But even if we don't have the power to choose where we come from, we can still choose where we go from there. We can still do things, and we can try to feel okay about them." So right now, we can't control where we are. We can't control that we have to social distance from each other, and that we can't go out into our normal routine and do the things that we usually do. But we still can try to do something new right from our home. So for me this week, I'm going to be motivated to try something new. Maybe it's a new workout class. Maybe it's a book that I didn't plan on reading, but maybe I'll pull off my shelf. And I'm going to challenge you to try to do something new this week too. Try to bake a new recipe or read a new book. Something new that you didn't plan on doing. Slides up for you today. So if you check out the classwork tab and you go to the Of Mice and Men slideshow, you'll be able to see some new slides pertaining specifically to literary elements today. So one of the project options that we presented to you required you to include 2 literary elements in your explanation. So I'm just going to go through a few with you today and make sure that you check out the slides too so that you have a good understanding of the literary elements in Of Mice and Men. So we do have examples of foreshadowing in Of Mice and Men, one most notably being the mouse. So the mouse that Lenny has in his pocket that unfortunately he has stroked just a little bit too hard, put a little bit too much pressure on that mouse, and unfortunately the mouse did die. So the mouse in his pocket does foreshadow the death of the puppies, of Curly's wife, and ultimately of Lenny's death, his own death too. And then we've also got some symbolism. Symbolism is another one that you could use for your project. There's so many examples of symbolism in Of Mice and Men, but one of them is the rabbits. So you know that Lenny is constantly asking George to repeat his dream to him about owning their own ranch, and of course about the part where Lenny says that he's going to be the one who tends the rabbits. And he likes hearing this, and that is because hearing that he could tend the rabbits symbolizes the idea of having a fruitful future and a future that is inclusive, where both Lenny and George work equally on the ranch together. And then the last one that I want to share with you, and this one is really my favorite, is imagery. So I'm just going to read to you right here, and you can follow along. I've got the very first paragraph from Of Mice and Men when the Salinas River is being described. So I'll just read it to you. It says, "A few miles south of Soledad, the Salinas River drops in close to the hillside bank and runs deep and green. The water is warm too, for it has slipped twinkling over the yellow sands in the sunlight before reaching the narrow pool. On one side of the river, the golden foothill slopes curve up to the strong and rocky Gabilan Mountains, but on the valley side, the water is lined with trees, willows, fresh and green with every spring, carrying in their lower leaf junctures the debris of the winter's flooding, and sycamores with mottled, white, recumbent limbs and branches that arch over the pool." So I've highlighted some words and phrases there for you. Drops in close to the hillside, runs deep and green. Water is warm, twinkling, yellow sands in the sunlight, golden foothill slopes. So all of these highlighted words and phrases that I have here develop a tranquil tone in the story. So right off the bat, we have this very heavenly mood, okay? We know that we're looking at a peaceful story right away, which is interesting because just a little bit later on, just a few pages on, is when we start to hear from George and Lenny, and we hear more about their relationship, and Lenny has this dead mouse in his pocket. So it's interesting because there's such a contrast between what we know of the men so far, that they had to leave their former workplace, that Lenny seems to be this big man who has this small dead mouse in his pocket, yet they are in a setting that is so peaceful. So that's my example of imagery for you guys. Bye guys, have a nice day.